Welcome to NEXTGames video on June 2020's Intense Ambuscade. Now, this is the most challenging Intense Ambuscade to solo in memory. Even on easy difficulty, I see this posing a challenge for many. I spent a bit of time trying various techniques to find what worked. I will go over both my successes and failures to try and save you some time. First, the key item. I like to use the home point warp to Inner Rakaznar, and then run along this path to the Dullahan Axe Grinders. Now, alternatively, there are two other camps you can go to. One is in Cizik, number 1 Bivik. Go to Sea Gates at G11, and then find the Unrelenting Dullahan at I7. Or, you can go to Moramar, number 5 Bivik, then go to Mo Gates at H5 for the Soma Tophalix Dullahan at I8. Now, for this month's fight, it's against a Dullahan and a Monoceros. There is a lot of moving parts to this fight, so I'll break it down by the order you will approach it. First, you will kill the Bozetto Charger, which is the Monoceros type mob. The Bozetto Charger will use 4 abilities. The first is Grace of Hera. This will grant a potent regen and wipe all of the debuffs that are on the Bozetto Charger. Damsel Memento restores 5% hit points and also removes all status ailments. Rampant Stance will do AoE damage and stun everyone in range for a brief period of time. And Scintillant Lance is conal damage that will wipe your shadows, and this can actually do a lot of damage to you because while he is readying all of these abilities, he's also absorbing any damage that he takes. And then the next time that he uses Scintillant Lance, he will inflict all of that damage into that conal area in front of him, and it's usually enough to one-shot you, even with a single round of melee attacks as being the only damage that he's absorbed. Therefore, I recommend that you always have Migawari up for the first part of this fight while you're fighting the Bozetto Charger, so that whenever he uses Scintillant Lance, it will just be eaten by Migawari. Now, if you are in a party setup and not solo, you have a lot more options here. Have one of your party members spam Enfeebles on the Bozetto Charger, and this will kind of force the Bozetto Charger to constantly spam Grace of Hera, making it so moves like Scintillant Lance aren't even used. So if you don't have a ninja to absorb the damage, that is another way to deal with it in a party setting. The Bozetto Charger is light-based, so it takes very good damage from darkness-based weapon skills and skill chains, so try to use those when fighting the Charger. After the Charger is dead, your work has really just begun in this fight, so try to dispatch with it as quickly as possible. Great care must be taken when fighting the Dullahan called the Bozetto Retributionist, or the fight will end very quickly. First, let's talk about the abilities, and then we can discuss how they affect each other and how to deal with them. The first ability is Infernal Bulwark. This gives him a potent stone skin, haste, attack boost, defense boost, magic attack bonus, and magic defense bonus. This can be dispelled, but normally in solo fights you end up just fighting through the stone skin. Now from 5 to 100% hit points, he also has access to Atramentus Libations, which is an AoE drain ability, Nether Castigation, which is a high AoE damage ability, Eischen Schneider, which is an instant KO for everyone within 30 feet. Now if you use the heal command and are healing when this goes off, it will convert it to damage instead. And the last one is Charging Up, and this ability will actually increase the damage of the next ability that follows it based upon certain factors that we'll talk about in a minute. Now under 5% hit points, he has access to Dread Spites, which is a potent HP absorption ability, Noah Hinto, which inflicts severe darkness damage based off the amount of damage the enemy has received. So once you get under 5% and he starts casting Dread Spikes, you definitely want to do damage lightly to try and make sure that the next time he uses Noah Hinto, it doesn't wipe your entire party. Lastly, he's supposed to be able to use Death Spikes underneath 5% hit points or at low hit points. Now I've not seen this used on normal, but it might be possible, and it's almost certainly used in the higher difficulties. The other thing I'll point out is all of these hit points in regards to less than 5%, above 5%, are what I experienced on normal. It's quite possible on very difficult, these percentages are as high as maybe 25% is when some of these things will kick in. So just know that if you are trying those higher difficulties with the party setup, when some of these things kick in may change a little bit. Now before we go into the next part of the video, I have a recommendation you should do to your configurations and its font colors, just for this ambuscade, as I was finding it extremely difficult to actually see what mode the NM was in all of the battle log spam. So what I recommend you do is to go into your menus, and then the config menu, and then go to font colors. Now you're going to scroll down to System, and then the last one called Basic System Message. Now normally this is a very bland tan color, and it entirely gets missed in all of the battle log spam. So I recommend you go ahead and change this to something that's very obvious that stands out. You can obviously change it back later if it's obnoxious, but I'm telling you that you probably will not win this ambuscade if you don't do this, because being able to see these specific messages in the log is the single most important part of this fight. All you do to change the color is just select Battle System Message, and then just change the R, G, and B sliders to give it the proper amount of red, green, and blue. Obviously, if all of them are empty, it's invisible, and if you have red all the way up, it's very red. If you have red and blue all the way up, it gets purple like you see here. So just go ahead and pick a color that's very obnoxious and in your face, so that you're not going to miss these messages as they're spamming through your battle log. I also have one final warning for people, especially anyone using the Windower application that I recommend people use. It's a phenomenal application, and after updates, usually within a few hours, all of the add-ins and plugins are updated with all of the new spells and abilities that are in that new update. However, if you're somebody that logs in shortly after the update and then does not log off, like myself, this can pose a problem, and I encountered it during this update. I ended up logging in just a few hours after the update. Windower didn't have any updates at the time, but I went ahead and wanted to start trying to do my ambuscade videos, and all of the abilities that the Dullahan was using were coming across in the log as orc moves. Additionally, I was not able to see any of the miasma and other text and modes that the NM was in. Now, once I actually closed out of my game, allowed Windower to update the next time I opened it, and then logged into the game, all of those issues went away. So this is basically just a warning to any players who start playing shortly after an update and are experiencing any odd issues. Wait a few hours, go ahead and shut down the game, open Windower 4 again, let it update all of its add-ins and plugins like it does automatically, and then play the game again and see if they've happened to have fixed those issues. Now that we have discussed all of the abilities he has access to, let's talk about how they work together. Every time he uses charging up, you should turn and wait to see the message that follows a second or two later. If it says, the boss begins charging up, you can just go right back to meleeing, but I'd hold off on any weapon skills. He should use Atrement's Libations within a few seconds for 300 to 1000 AoE damage. If it says, the boss's rage is boiling over, you need to stay turned and wait for your trust to give him enough TP to use Nether Castigation for 300 to 1000 AoE damage. If it says the boss begins to emit a Noxus Miasma, you need to immediately turn around again and weapon skill him from behind. Please note it may take up to 2 weapon skills depending on the amount of damage you're doing per weapon skill. You want to see the message, the boss's miasma dissipates, but its rage is beginning to boil over. Once you see that, turn immediately and let the trust trigger Nether Castigation. Now if you are attempting this in a party setup and on higher difficulties, I have heard that summoner groups are doing very well this month since they can stay out of range of all the nasty stuff and bounce hate around all the avatars. Most pet jobs in general should do good in this setup, I would think, this month. Now if you don't have any of those pet jobs available, you could approach it similarly to how I am in this video, with a tank that this month can be a ninja, paladin, rune fencer, or even a monk, and then 2 to 3 support being red mage, corsair, bard, 1 to 2 damage dealers, and a single white mage. Have the DD behind the mob and being very careful not to weapon skill during or after a charging up until they know what mode it's in. Supports come in during boiling mode to feed low damage TP to the NM. A single white mage should be enough for most, but if your group is just learning, more help from support jobs on curing may be needed. It's on everyone to make sure they do the damage only at the appropriate times. Support jobs meleeing during any non-boiling point is feeding him needless TP that may trigger a charging up. Meanwhile, DD meleeing during boiling point or just mindlessly spamming weapon skills will easily get their group killed this month. Final quick notes on this NM. He will use absorb spells that are AoE. He is darkness based and light weapon skills and skill chains do more damage. Finale is required to dispel, so keep that in mind. Lastly, everyone must take extreme caution at low hit point to not kill the group and have patience through all the nasty moves that he can throw at you near the end there. Now, the trust selection and how you approach this fight is critical if you are soloing it. If you try and tank it yourself, you will do very little damage as the shield block rate is extremely high. This makes it so doing enough damage to get rid of the miasma while tanking is really hard. I tried it this way many times and determined that it just wasn't feasible. You don't want to use any tank trust that do good damage. August and the Arcs kept doing weapon skills during the boiling point periods that would lead to getting trust killed. Korumuru and other trust have a very hard time living through all the AoE moves. Yoran normally makes it due to his tone skin, but all others fall quickly. I tried using 1 damage dagger katana combinations and moving to the front of the mob to speed TP gain along during the boiling point periods, but found that over the course of each fight there would be a time when that did too much damage and it caused all the trust to die, so it just wasn't a worthwhile strategy. Arc TT was awesome at stunning things, and I thought I was actually on to something until I actually saw him stun another castigation. All it did was delay its casting, so when he did end up using Nether Castigation about 10 seconds later, the move was even more powerful because all that extra damage was added on top of it, and it killed us all. So stunning Nether Castigation was not a worthwhile solution. I also tried many combinations of Trust to feed the boss TP, and almost all of them gave him too much damage during boiling point periods for Trust to reliably live through that whole fight. So this is why I specifically picked, in the end, the Trust that I did, and this is the combination that ended up working for me. I'll quickly talk about the Trust and why it is I landed on them. I ended up on Gesho because his damage is actually just so horrible. Even when he's weapon skilling, he never really goes above 1000 damage, and therefore he doesn't actually add too much to all those nasty moves. I choose Joachim over Olmia because Olmia kept dying on me during the AoE moves, and additionally, Joachim adds a little bit of TP gain as he constantly is throwing things, and doing very little damage with that. Next, we have Monburo, who's basically there to continually get all the status debuffs off of us and lend some curing. Then we have Arcelio 1, who is there primarily just to feed mindless TP to the NM and actually not do much damage. She's pretty good at that. Additionally, I found that Koru was quite frequently dying to AoE, and she actually stays alive, so that's why I ended up settling on her. And then Yoran Oran, along with Stone Skin, does actually end up usually living through this fight. So I added him for some curing, because quite frankly, we're going to need it. I start with the usual buffs up of Enmity, because at the start of this fight, I want to tank, so that I can make sure that the Bozzetto Charger is facing me, so that any of those Scintillant Lances hit just me and not all the Trust, which would one-shot them quite easily. I usually let the Retributionist just kind of roam around during this part. Recasting Shadows will kind of bounce him back to you, and then after a cure or two, he'll go towards one of the mages, and it'll just kind of go back and forth while you kill the Charger. Therefore not actually doing much damage to anyone, and it's just a nice easy way to deal with him. You could provoke him, but then the problem is hate is on you once you finish the Charger, and you really want the hate to be on Gesho after you finish this Charger off, so that's why I usually don't recommend provoking the Retributionist during this phase. The key things to remember during this part is to constantly keep him facing away from all of your Trust, keep Migawari up, and try and learn his TP patterns so that you can make sure to get your weapon skills in between those TP ability moves. Usually you can get 2 to 3 weapon skills in per each ability. If you want, you can try and turn while you see the abilities being activated. That will make it so that Scintillant Lance doesn't hit for as much damage, and so that the Charger doesn't gain as much hit points. I just choose to not turn and just keep gaining TP so that I can weapon skill as soon as it's over with. But know that you really can use either of those two methods. Just know that you still want to keep Migawari up even if you're trying to turn, because there are times that even when you get in a single round of attacks, that will be enough to make Scintillant Lance one-shot you. So now that the Charger is dead, we want to go ahead and change roles. We want to go ahead and put Inin up, as well as Yane to lower our enmity as much as possible, and then engage the Retributionist so that Gesho can take over on Hate. You then want to move around behind the Retributionist and get to work. Follow all of the rules and instructions we talked about earlier in this video, and you should see all of those methods on display here. Enjoy the rest of the fight, everyone. and we beat it with 2 minutes remaining. Definitely not something I would recommend as an efficient use of your time, but that is how you do it if you want to go ahead and beat it on the normal difficulty this month. Hope everyone found that helpful. If you've stuck around this long in the video, go ahead and stick around for a minute longer, and I'll show you exactly what it looks like when Window 4 isn't updated properly. Otherwise, if you're taking off, I appreciate you watching. Stay safe and stay healthy, everyone.